This is CHAYELA, my mother, and welcome to the exhibition. This is the first panel where you walk in, and it is telling you the story about Vilna, which was known as the Jerusalem of Lithuania, because it was the center, the spiritual center and the cultural center, political and religious activities of Eastern European Jewry. And then you move on to CHAYELA and an iconic picture of the Vilna ghetto. Please note, please ask all visitors to sign the visitor's book before they leave. That would be so nice. And you can hear CHAYELA's voice singing. We move into the exhibition and we come to the first panel, which talks about CHAYELA's childhood. And we see my grandparents and a copy of the newspaper my grandparents owned and printed, the Ovent Courier, and a typical Vilna school childhood. This is my uncle's book that he got published of poetry when he was 14, and he worked and wrote for the puppet theater. And this photograph is the only existing photograph we have of CHAYELA, her brother Leib, and her sister Mary. It was taken before the war. Behind you on the light box, you have the Vilna of CHAYELA and Leib's childhood. It shows typical photographs of what was happening in Vilna just before the war, when CHAYELA was still a child. We've used authentic photographs of the historic time because we do not have any personal photographs of CHAYELA's childhood. The next panel talks about the Nazi occupation when Vilna was invaded by Germany. It talks about the spiritual resistance and the armed resistance in the ghetto, and it talks about the existence of and development of the theater in the ghetto and my mother herself. This panel will speak about her and her work in the ghetto as a singer, as an entertainer, and how she became known as the Wunderkind of the Vilna ghetto. And this is a page taken from the Blue Book that she wrote all the songs her brother wrote after the war. In this little Blue Book, lots of songs from the ghetto and also from other writers. And there is only the second photograph. We only have two of Leib, my uncle, the songwriter. On this monitor, we have a rolling selection of posters from the Vilna ghetto with their explanation. We then move on to information about YIVO, the Yiddish Scientific Institute that collected all the documents and archives of Jewish culture, and my uncle's role in preserving many of the papers when he worked there. It talks about the paper brigade, those who saved so many archival documents. And it talks about Samuel Beck, the artist who was a young child in the ghetto, and the poets and songwriters Shmerke Kasaginski and Avram Sutzkever, and Leib and his role in the paper brigade. And then the music stops with the liquidation of the ghetto, which was 80 years ago this year. And Uncle Leib was taken to a camp in Estonia, and he was unfortunately killed 2 days before liberation. And we move on, and you'll see here is a map that I had put together of my mother's journey from Vilna through to the Vilna ghetto, Kaiserwald, Stutthof, Krottendorf, and her death march, and then her liberation in Lauenburg, and then moving eventually to Bydgoszcz after she had met my father, also a fellow survivor. And then it talks about their liberation, and then we move on after liberation from Poland to Paris. My mother joined a state Yiddish theater and performed all over Europe, also in the displaced persons camps. And there, Molly Picon, the famous American actress, discovered her and realized, oh my goodness, she's a mini Chayela. We need to get her out of Poland. And it was Molly Picon who organized an interview with the famous Sol Hurok, an American impresario, and managed to get my mother the papers necessary to get her out of Poland. And so my mother and father, when they were married, they moved to Paris, where they lived for a couple of years. And my mother continued to perform all the time in Yiddish theater and in cabaret, and also continued to perform around Europe, going back and forth, doing many performances. Back to the Lightbox that has different aspects of Chayela and her theater. This was in Israel. Moving round to this side are performances about Chayela. Ghetto by Sobol was written about the Vilna Ghetto, and the main character is Chayela. And the poster below is Aviva Pelham playing Chayela in the South African production. And here you have when Chayela was invited to South Africa by Sarah Sylvia, who came and saw her in Europe. Sarah Sylvia was part of the African Consolidated Theatres. Chayela was brought to Cape Town, where she fell in love with the place, and it is the reason
she moved to Cape Town and began to raise a family.
And here we have the iconic Lion's Head in Sea Point, the mountain, and a young Zola, me, Nava, my sister, and Chayela. And we go through the part of raising a family, the photographs of us as babies, and my sister's matric dance where she wore a green dress, and my mother was very superstitious and didn't want her to wear a green dress, but she did anyway. And then this photograph was taken. My sister was an amazing artist, and this was the opening
of her Israeli painting exhibition.
And more about my father. And my father was very involved in creating the organization called the Sherita Pleita, which was for Holocaust survivors, like a support group in Cape Town. He worked in the Jewish newspapers. He wrote many articles. He was a journalist. He always wrote about the Holocaust. He was also instrumental in getting this book published, which was survivor testimony of Cape Town survivors in sacred memory. And there are pictures here of many of the local Cape Town Holocaust survivors, the people who came after the war. And here's little Zola lighting a Yom HaShoah candle at age 10. And then we move across to Chayela on the international stage. Many of her photographs and programs and album covers, and a glimpse into her on Broadway. From the Playbill, you can see she did 2 long-running shows as leading lady on Broadway. And then we move to more of her performances, local as well. Her famous saying, "Chap sich eine Tag," grab the day, seize the day, live your life, celebrate every single day. And we have here some more programs of local productions that she did in South Africa, and her iconic role as Golda in Fiddler on the Roof, which she performed even while she was suffering with her ovarian cancer, and she passed away about a week after the last performance. And here we have a monitor that is on a loop showing various programs from the shows Chayela did, documents that she had, and newspaper articles, reviews, a whole collage. And then we move across to the legacy of the children. So here you have Nava Piatka, my older sister, who accomplished a lot in carrying the torch. She was a very accomplished artist and writer. She wrote a book, No Goodbyes, about my parents' journey, my mother's life. She wrote a play about Chayela's life called Better Don't Talk, which she performed internationally, including in Vilna, on the same stage that my mother performed all those years ago. She performed the play in Yiddish, and this is a copy of her book, No Goodbyes, and some of her amazing artwork, including a wonderful picture of Yisroelik, which is the name of the puppet and the name of the song that my Uncle Labe wrote that my mother made famous. Yisroelik meaning Little Israel, an orphan boy who used to live in the ghetto and sell cigarettes and sweets to survive. And then we move across to the Zola panel, which would be all about me and my relationship to theatre and continuing on the legacy of my mom and uncle as a songwriter, having written Herzlich zu, my first Yiddish song, as a tribute to all Holocaust survivors and to their families lost and to all their future generations. And then a little more about my Zoom performances, where I have done a lot of performances online talking about my parents and their Holocaust journey and singing the songs of CHAYELA and Leib, being part of the Yiddish Song Festival, and singing and performing and giving keynote addresses at the cemetery on Yom HaShoah. And then moving back to the middle, we come across an amazing showcase where we have lovely artifacts. And this was one of my mother's favorite dresses that she wore on many performances, including the Alhambra Theatre in South Africa. Moving along, we have her album cover, one of them, and we have her little beautiful lion, Leo, named after Leib. It was her mascot that went to every performance with her. And the blue book that she wrote all her brother's songs, some of her albums, her lovely sequin top that she also wore on the stage, and here she's wearing it right there. And then this dress that she wore in the 50s when she first came to South Africa is right here. And then we have little Yisroelik, the puppet, that was featured in Nava's play. And here is the actual book of her story of our parents, No Goodbyes.
The book in sacred memory, and here she is wearing the dress. And moving back, you will see a new panel, which is all about the making of the puppet, Yisroelik.
Which is a very powerful story because Nava attended one by one an organization where children of Nazis and children of Holocaust victims come together and make conversation and support each other and communicate and break barriers. And this lady, Helga, was a puppet maker, and she had a beautiful puppet called Helga. And my sister said, please won't you make me a puppet? I need a little Yisroelik puppet for my show. And together Nava and Helga changed little Helga into Yisroelik. And then we move into the little mini theater we have for you here. Inside, this is the Vilna Ghetto Theatre emblem. And what we've done is we've put together a documentary, a mini version, when Nava went to Vilna and spoke to survivors who knew CHAYELA, who went to her performances, who sang with her, and when Nava did her performance on the stage in Vilna, on the very same stage that my mother performed 80 years before. And inside here you can sit on little chairs. It's a little mini theater, and you can watch a half-hour documentary of Nava.
What do you hope in the big picture? What do you hope to gain from this experience?
I think a sense of destiny.
And so she talks about her journey to Vilna, and you'll see part of the performance as well she did in Yiddish.
And on the outside panels,
we have all CHAYELA's newspaper cutting samples and programs, just a whole collage of various articles and programs that she featured in. And then we move across to the final panel, which has various photographs of CHAYELA in different performance mode, and also all links to her songs, to where she's featured on the internet, YouTube channel, and the QR code to get to the website, and that stunning photograph that I love so much of my darling mom. Thank you for watching.